welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today at Cold Jets Dry Ice Blasting 101. I'm Mike Henderson. I am your host. Let's get started. So, first, a little bit about me. Um, that's a picture of me in March of 1994. I had hair and looks and everything. I was hired here to do some marketing work. I did trade shows and I bought advertising and I did direct mail and basically lead generation and obviously industrial fashion modeling, um, stuff like that. I did that for a year, and then afterwards, Cold Jet moved me to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, where I took over a 15 state territory. Um, I did that for several years, and then I moved to St. Paul, Minnesota, where I started working with 3M in the mining industry. And in 2001, I moved back here to Loveland and I took over the Southeast, which was Kentucky to Florida and the Caribbean islands. I that I did that territory got smaller, and after 30 years, we all decided that 30 years on the road was enough. And I now, in my current role, do this webinars, public speaking, and one thing I do and I love to do is answer the phone. The phone rings here. People have ideas, and will this work for this? And can you use this for that? And I field those calls, and I really love that part of the job. Okay, let's get started. So this is our global headquarters in Loveland, Ohio. If you don't know where that is, we're right outside of Cincinnati. Out of the hundreds of people we employ around the globe, 150 are here. This is where our senior management lives, all of the administration. So, um, purchasing and uh, engineering, and also the people that run our world class manufacturing facility where we laser cut and weld and machine um, and we wire all of our own electrical panels and assemble everything. We also have a warehouse where we store parts, and we staff a whole team of service people to answer phone calls from around the globe on issues you may have. We also have bricks and mortar and staff in Belgium, Germany, China, Japan, Spain, Poland, Mexico, Denmark, Canada, and in the US on the West Coast, we have a place in Rancho Cucamonga, California, of all places. The way this all started was back in the 70s, the government was giving away all this federal research money for companies that wanted to find better ways to strip paint from commercial aircraft. The process to strip the paint off of 747 included a lot of chemicals and work and disposal and treatment of those chemicals. And so Lockheed Martin had gotten their fingers in that money, and they assembled a team and they came up with several processes, this being one of them. And also from that school came walnut hull blasting and cornstarch blasting, and they even tried popcorn and all these green technologies. But this one, they really wanted to work because it had zero secondary waste stream. And the only problem was it didn't work. Dry ice, we learned, does not strip very good paint. Aircraft paint is good paint. Nor in its infancy, we didn't really understand how to manipulate the pellet to get it to gentle up, because at the time we were throwing pellets at the skin and we're dinging up the aircraft. So this was just not going to work. So some people on that team knew some people in Cincinnati, Ohio that could build stuff, and they got some funding and built a cold jet. And back in those days, it was about the size of a UPS truck. It had to make ice and it had drive around on the back of a semi. It was a big deal. Um, when I came here, the super mini model was the size of a Volkswagen, and it weighed about 3,500 pounds. So we've come a long way. Uh, but what I wanted to say, uh, the R&D dollars that have been spent on this technology by this company have brought us where we are. Without it, this would not be a product. This would not be an industry. This would not be technology that's used anyway. Since 1988, when we opened the company, we have installed 25,000 plus machines in some 58 or 60 countries. That map you're looking at right there is pretty accurate. We also build the world's best dry ice production equipment, and we have installed about 1,100 of these things in various parts of the world. Okay, so here's kind of our current lineup. Like I said, it's come a long way. We have entry level machines like that ice rocket that you see all. This is for the occasional user, and or the hobbyist. You wouldn't believe the buildings I've walked in to see people's car collections, and this is what they want to buy to clean their own equipment, and God bless them. Um, the next in row is our Aero line. This is super heavy duty. This thing is all welded steel, 18 gauge stainless, foam filled pneumatic, flat free tires. It's got a great big motor in it, so it'll last you 10 years. It has multiple agitation, which is important. The hose, the applicator, everything has to be super heavy duty. And it's designed for the hardcore environment, steel mills, foundries, uh, oil fields, contractors that have, you know, gorillas that work for them that are hard on equipment. Next is the Ultra line, which is what we call a smart machine. Um, this thing has inner working parts that manipulate the pellets to do different things to get different results. And then you can dial in recipes. By that, I mean you can preset the air pressure, the pounds per minute, the size of the particle, and program that so that the operator who needs to log in, that's the recipe he's going to use to do that particular application. That way it's not overdone or or underdone. It also will collect data, meaning it will send the supervisor a note because it has IoT in it. Joe is running the machine right now. He's using exactly this much trigger time on this program, and he's using exactly this much ice. This is great for supervisory reasons, but also this is a report that you might not need to put into a file. If it's something critical, a medical or an aerospace type thing, you might need to put that in the file so to refer back to it later. It also has a diagnostic system in it, so if it's starting to run funny or if it feels like it's pulling a funny amperage, will send you a note, and then we can get online and see that, so we can fix it before it becomes catastrophic. And then we have these tabletop units, which are smart too. They gather data and they have IoT, and they're popular with people that mold stuff because you can run it up and down a mold press row, and you can plug it into almost any airline, and just real simple to run around the plant with. We'll talk more about that later. What is dry ice? Dry ice is nothing new. It's been around 100 years. It's frozen liquid CO2. Dry ice is cold, as we all know. It's 109 degrees below zero. Dry ice sublimates, not often confused with evaporates. Sublimation is where it goes from a solid to a gas. And the great thing about that is it leaves behind zero water, residue, chemicals. It's literally safe for hundreds and hundreds of applications, especially the hard ones and critical ones like pharma and medical devices and nuclear and stuff like that. Dry ice is made from recycled CO2, so it's a byproduct. Okay, and this is how that works. So, when you distill grains to make ethanol or alcohol or ammonia, these are spirits, and they're all made in a great big moonshine still. So when you distill that, there's a solid runoff of pure CO2, and that'll be piped next door to another plant, like, and usually it's an industrial gas company like Air Gas or Praxair or one of the gas, and they collect it and they scrub it and then they pressurize it. Now CO2 gas under pressure becomes LCO2 or liquid CO2. And that way it can be stored and transported and trucked to a facility where they're going to convert it into gas. Now, I'm going to read this statement, but the California Air Resources Board, which is the toughest governing uh, management that looks after CO2 emissions and greenhouse gases and things of that nature, states due to the fact that dry ice is recycled CO2, it will not contribute to your greenhouse gas score. In the calculation of carbon footprint, CO2 is accounted for at the producer level. So the ethanol plant pays for that carbon footprint. It is not counted a second time. So you need not worry about your carbon footprint upsetting the what's going on. Okay, so here's how it happens. Um, this guy has received a silo of CO2. That's probably a 30 or 40 ton silo. Why does it have to be so big? It doesn't have to be, but it's convenient to have it that big so you can take an entire truckload. Um, if you start splitting up loads, it adds to the tonnage cost, and that's a whole. All right, so it's piped over to that cold jet machine. That is a cold jet pelletizer, and it is inside that pelletizer is a hydraulic pump, and there is a hydraulic ram and piston. Okay, and that's attached to a stainless steel barrel. And when we release the or inject the LCO2 into that barrel and it experiences the atmospheric pressure change, it flashes into a snow. And as it fills up, a snowstorm begins to go on there. It's full, so that activates that ram and piston, and it packs that snow into a cake, and it shoves it through an extrusion die, or we call it a spaghetti die because it looks like pasta when it comes. And as it falls out into the box, it's brittle, so it breaks into shorter pieces, giving you a more uniform 3 millimeter pellet. So if you look there, it's falling into that blue box. Those boxes keep the dry ice for a week. Now you do lose 4% of the product a day to just to natural sublimation, but it will keep for a week. So you get a weekly delivery of dry ice, how many of our boxes you're going to use, and then the next week they pick up the empties and bring you new ice. It runs very smoothly. How do you get it? Okay, well, our sales staff can show you exactly where to go for your particular location, but it comes from an industrial gas house, Air Gas, Praxair, one of these guys, or you can just call a welding supply house. They usually have it too. They have a lot of CO2 on site, so often, not all of them, but a good deal of them make their own dry ice. And then there are companies that have just set up the equipment to make and deliver dry ice, and we call them independents. Um, those two guys are holding dry ice. So the guy on the left is holding 3 millimeter pellets. That's what we use for cleaning. And on the right, that looks to be about a 16 millimeter nugget. And this is what's used for its BTU value, meaning it's used to ship foods, medicine, biological stuff. It has a lot of applications, but if you're going to ship some food somewhere, probably it's going to show up like dry ice here in the States on a national average is 30 cents a pound to 80 cents a pound. Um, to do industrial cleaning, most operators run about 100 pounds an hour. Okay, so if you're getting it for 30 cents a pound, that's $30 an hour to operate. Here's how it works. Okay, there are three things that make it work. So we load the pellets into the machine. The machine is then hooked up to your compressed air system. All right. And the machine meters the pellets into a airstream and shoots them out of a gun and nozzle. Three things happen. There is kinetic energy when the pellet strikes the surface. Now, we talk about it being non-abrasive. Abrasion refers to when you abrade a metal surface. We do not abrade anything, okay? But there is some scrubbing action. Second, there is the thermal shock, and that is what happens when the contaminant, the dirt, whatever you're trying to clean, becomes cold faster than the substrate or the surface that it's stuck to. So it fractures and releases its bond. Okay. Then there's something called gas expansion. Now we've made that pellet and compressed it, and it has a certain hardness. When that strikes the surface and you force its sublimation, there's a bit of an explosion that happens, and it causes a lifting effect on the contaminant. Okay, so you have the impact of the pellet, the thermal shock, and the gas expansion. The best thing that happens is it all sublimates back to a gas. You don't even see the dry ice. The only time you see is when you're loading it into the machine. When it's coming out at 900 to 1,000 feet per second, all you see coming out is that vapor path rate. So there's no ice or pellets exploding and bouncing all over and interrupting the workspace or bouncing onto the operator, making him unsafe. Frankly, this is the most popular job in the plant because it's nice and cool and is so the operator. Okay, there's something called the Mohs hardness scale. Okay, and this is where they measure the hardness of aggregate to measure it against a scratch test if they're going to test something. Okay, so on the Mohs hardness scale, talc is a number 1, diamond is a 10. Well, dry ice is about a 1.5. Your fingernail is about a 2.5. All right, so that tells you just how gentle it is. Um, so this guy right here, which found out earlier, that happens to be me, is cleaning a mold that makes a dashboard. Okay, so this mold is rather delicate. It's very expensive. That might be $1 million mold. And after you make so many parts, it gets fouled because there's an off gassing or a chemical that leaches out of the plastic after you make so many of them. And if you don't clean it, the part looks funny and it gets a funny gloss level on. Well, the last thing you want to do is go in there with something difficult and hard to because it's going to tear that mold up. And so now it needs a very expensive repair or maybe a replacement. And then like this one, you have all kinds of tricky geometries and things that you can't reach in. And it's just to do this by hand is a very tricky. Again, no water, no chemicals, chemicals, no disassembly, and it's just a breeze for the operator to operate. So we to explain that we are very delicate, we tell people we can take the M off an M&M, and that's exactly what I'm doing right there. Now, is this a real thing? No, but we're proving a point. I'm cleaning that M off without, and of course I'm. All right. So yeah, I do that about 40 times a day. Okay. So, okay. Here's this thing. Those guys. All right. Okay. Dry ice is completely water free. In this particular case, this house had a water intrusion. And if you know anything about mold, what happens is you need water and you need something organic and a mold spore. And now you're growing mold. All right. What in this case, the contractor that they hired came in and power washed the mold off. Okay. Well, it looked great when he left, but 2 days, 3 days later, they had the three times the mold. You can't fix a water problem with more water. Dry ice is completely dry and it takes all that mold off and leaves it dry. So there's not a chance of a respore. Secondly, it gets all in the nooks and crannies and between the board and joist. So it's more thorough. Other because there's spores in between there, and if you leave it alone, you're gonna get a respore, and then the contractor has to come back. So it's water free. Um, it's completely chemical and detergent free. So in this case, that guy's making granola. All right. So they put the oats out there, and then they cover it in molasses and sugar and flavoring and juice and sticky stuff. And now it's stuck on that conveyor. Now, to clean that off would takes thousands of gallons, and now the water ends up on the floor. It's got all that food in it, and they have to corral it and squeegee it, and it ends up going down the sewer. And okay, that clogs up the sewer. It ends up at the waste treatment plant, and that's a problem, and it's just very taxing. But let's not get away from the fact that look how clean that is. Um, that is amazing level of clean that they're achieving there with the effort they're doing, and they're using a recycled byproduct. No secondary waste stream. Okay, this is a prison in Ohio. This is where they filmed the Shawshank Redemption. All right, and that is a cast iron staircase that has lead paint on it. Now the paint's coming off pretty easy because it's old. Um, but normally, if you went to um, clean that with a traditional blast media, let's say it was sand, just for safety for sitting, because um, you would have piles and piles of sand that's now contaminated with. And what has to happen is that all gets loaded into a 55-gallon drum, and you put it on a truck, and it goes off to the landfill. All right, now can you imagine how much sand and contaminated sand you've got to put in the landfill to do the entire prison? If you use dry ice, the ratio of contaminated sand to just paint chips is like 50 barrels to 1. And I don't know what it is now, but like 10 years ago, I checked on it, and it was like $2,000 a drum to put it in the landfill. If you start doing the math, this adds up very quickly. So it's no secondary waste stream. Reduction in downtime. So what this guy's doing is that is a big heat exchanger or a radiator that is cooling all of the equipment used to extract oil out of the ground. So they might be extracting oil, maybe it's natural gas, but they're mining. And if that thing gets clogged up and it's outside and it's dirty and it does get clogged up, they have to shut the whole line down. All right. Now, this thing, they might be making $20,000 a minute, maybe more, maybe less. I don't know. But that's not the point. The point is, um, they've got to shut things down. And now that money stops. Secondly, that radiator right there could be $5,000 or $10,000. So they have to replace that thing, and they end up sitting out in the field. If you look at that right now, if you can see the dirt's coming right out of the back of that thing. So he's cleaning that thing while they're in production, out replacing that thing. And also, this again is a very pleasant job for the guy that's got to do it as the alternative to swapping it all out and replacing it. Um, I love these because I'm a car guy. So, um, I've been detailing my cars with dry ice for years because I always had one. But when the rest of the world started to do it, I got excited. I mean, look at that greasy transmission there. All right. It would normally take a day to clean that. He probably did that in 5 minutes. And then there's that undercoating there. These classic car guys don't want that undercoating on there. It doesn't look good in the show when they're going to take it to a show or for resale. Um, to get that car sale ready or show ready, he might spend a month underneath there trying to do it by hand. Our way, maybe a day, maybe. Okay. And then we talk about ancillary applications. Most production company or most manufacturing plants buy this for some to solve some production problem. Okay. But almost always you have a little dry ice left over. So you go around and clean stuff. There's all kinds of stuff to clean. Materials handling equipment, fans. What's going on here is that's a dairy. And that milk has gotten all over the pallet racking and it's dried up, but it stinks and it's spoiled. And if they go get a steam cleaner or a power washer and power wash that off, it just reactivates it. And then it makes a huge watery mess with food and bacteria in it. Um, this guy has got a forklift covered in dog food. All right. Now, if he is going to power wash that thing off, that dried dog food now starts to make its own gravy. Okay, and it gets all over the floor. You got to corral it. It ends up in the sewer. It stinks. But it's not only that. There's an individual that has to sit in that forklift and drive it all day. And the dog food gets all over the steering wheel, the seat, the controls that he uses to manipulate the rack, on the pedals. And then the forklift is driving all over the plant delivering this bacteria. When the inspector shows up, they go right over that forklift and start to swab it. And because it's hard to clean, often it doesn't get done. This makes it easy to clean. Um, I like this one because I'm one of those guys will make everybody sit in the dark and watch TV because I don't want to pay the electric bill. This fan, I'm sorry, this motor is designed to self cool itself. Okay. Because you got those fins there, and behind that shroud right there there's a fan in there. And that fan is designed to pull air across those fins, and that's what keeps it cool. Well, people don't ever clean these things because they don't want to get them wet. All right. And if you remove that, they call it a bell, but if you remove that shroud underneath there and look at the fan blades, it doesn't look like fan blades. It looks like three chicken wings. It's not pulling any air across those fins. Now, what happens is that motor runs 3 to 5 amp higher than it should, more than its design point. If you go into a plant and start counting motors, you might have 2,000 motors in there, maybe more. Um, and if you've got 2,000 motors and they're all dirty and they're all running 3 amp higher than they're supposed to, that could equate into $20,000 a month in electric bill that you don't really need to be paying. You can take your extra dry ice and just go around and clean these motors and these control panels. These are everywhere. They get dirty, they get gunked up, they cross conduct, they get hot. The poor guy that's got to PM this thing has got to wade through all the dirt before he can start to work on it. Because it's non-conductive, you can go through and clean all this stuff without any water, chemicals, or disassembly. It's beautiful. Okay, the overall equipment effectiveness. This is a score that is given to a piece of production equipment. Okay? It's measuring is this thing running as fast as it can? Okay? Is it producing as many parts as it can? And of those parts, are they all good parts or are they scrap? Okay? If all these things line up and you get 100% score, you're doing well. It's almost always an impossibility. It's just in a struggle to make it. Dry ice cleaning affects every single one of these. If the machine is clean and cool, it's going to run fast. If the machine is clean and cool, it's going to make the right parts and it's going to reduce the scrap. Okay. We affect every single one of those. So if you want to achieve that score, you need a cold jet. Here's what you need to set it up. Of course, you need a cold jet. We have plenty of those. Okay. We have what I call inside outside. So inside the plant, you would just simply hook it up to your plant's compressed air system. The People want to think in terms of pressure. What kind of pressure are you using? Well, we're going to use whatever your line pressure is. In most plants, it's about 80 psi. What's more important is the air volume. This thing needs 130 CFM of air, so you're going to have to hook it up to a 3/4 inch or a 1 inch airline. And everybody, why does it use so much air? Well, because you can't take a garden hose and put it into a fire hose and get the same result. Okay. Um, but the next panicky thing is, well, wait a minute, using that much air, that's going to shut our line down. Well, we're not going to pull the trigger and leave it on for an entire hour. It's an intermittent use, so you don't have to worry about shutting the plant. In the 31 years I've been here, in some 10,000 demonstrations, nobody has come running down the hallway going, "Hey, you're shutting the plant down." Um, okay, for outside setup, you'll need to go to the tool rental, or maybe we'll have one of your own and rent a diesel air compressor. Okay, you need a 185 CFM rated or up. The more volume air you put behind it, the more performance you're going to get at the. Now, because the air quality coming off that compressor is hot and wet, because it's just a nature of compressing, um, you need to treat that air. So that thing in the middle there is what we call an aftercooler. And what the aftercooler does is it takes there's a filter in it, so it takes the excess moisture out of the air. And then there's a radiator fan in there to cool the air down to about room temperature. The reason that's important is if you send hot air right into the cold jet, and now we're putting dry ice pellets in it that are 110 below, you get a dew point reaction at the machine. Now you're making water, and that's just going to create problems. So it's important to have the aftercool. So air compressor, aftercooler, cold. Uh, well, yeah. What kind of PPE do we need? Okay, ear protection. There is some noise to the machine. It's actually at the nozzle tip. Um, so regular earplugs. Now OSHA wants you to wear uh, plugs and muffs for 8 hours of operation continuously. If you're just going to use it intermittently, plugs are fine. You're going to run it all day, plugs and muffs. Eye protection. Well, we're all wearing safety glasses anyway. And gloves. You need some regular or work gloves. You do not have to buy some crazy welding glove up to here. Everybody thinks if you touch dry ice, your arms are going to fall. That's not necessarily true. So just regular cotton gloves, all you need. And although your arms are not going to fall off, you don't need to be digging around in the dry ice. So you should use a scoop to handle it when you convey it from the storage container to the blasting machine. So ear protection, eye protection, gloves, scoop. Um, like I said, we have 100 some applications in so many industries. I mean, almost anything. If you're manufacturing something, you've got dirty parts, moving parts, uh, water problems. Um, gosh, anything. Chewing gum. Sold a machine to a university. All they want to do is clean the chewing gum off the sidewalk because they couldn't use any water. Okay, but the list goes on and on and on. I'm going to save you from. Okay. Manual cleaning versus dry ice blasting. And look at this guy on the left who's got to clean this mold so he can get this production line going. That look, that doing this kind of cleaning never gets the mold 100% clean, and it's arduous. It's like flossing a cat. All right, look what's going on the right. It's nice and cool. It's getting every nook and cranny. It's doing a complete job. That guy on the seat on the left there, that is a mold that makes a car seat, and that's wax on there. And when it wears out, you gotta scrape it all off. The guy on the right, pulling it off like butter. It takes hours to clean one of those seat molds with traditionally. You do it with cold jet, 20 minutes, 10 minutes. Way back when we clean a lot of molds. Okay. Back when I started this thing, that the tire industry was big on this, and the process to clean a tire mold, and the reason you have to clean it is because after you make so many of them, the tire mold gets dirty and it doesn't make a tire. So they have to cool this thing down. It's 380 degrees. It's a big, heavy mold. Even a passenger tire is about 300 pounds. So yeah, you have to unbolt it from the press, and then you bring a crane over and you take it over to this area and you sandblast it, which is a problem because the sand doesn't like the aluminum and it wears the lettering. So that mold only has a certain life. Every couple of years, you've got to replace it, and they're expensive. All right. Then they bring it back, they heat it back up, bullet, that whole thing. This takes 13 hours to do this process. I can clean one while it's hot online in about 11 minutes. Okay. Well, this is what it means to the tire maker. The tire maker now makes an extra 3,500 tires per press per year with zero tool wear and no landfill. Well, that is a remarkable deal. But it's the same thing with any molded products. I don't care if you're making Barbie doll heads or dog bowls or cell phones, okay? Or anything on a car. From bumper to bumper, it's all made in a mold or a stamp or a die or a casting. All of them get cleaned. All of them are hard to clean. This makes it easy. The food and beverage industry loves us. Okay, so, you take a soda can, a beer can, something like that. From the beginning, you got to stamp it. The stamp gets cleaned. Has to be decorated and printed. That gets cleaned. You have to put a coating on the inside. That gets cleaned. Then to fill it, there's soda, beer, fruit juices get slopped all over. They get these chains all sticky, and the wire harnesses, and that threaded thing right there. That gets. And look at that. It's been there for 100 years. Nobody's ever cleaned it. What they clean it just enough to get it passable. With this thing, you can clean everything without messing up the line. I mean, that thing has never been that clean, okay? And then when you're cleaning from the food side, there's an enormous amount of water that's brought it. Okay, what that is, that's a nut roaster, okay? And that thing gets the oils burn onto that plate. That whole thing has to be disassembled, cleaned with caustic soda, reassembled. It takes days. Not only that, the harsh chemicals they use de-season the roaster, so the peanuts taste like easy off. They have to throw them all away until it starts to season again. But anyway, in this mixing and stuff, um, uh, an obscene amount of money is water is brought into the plant, to make the ingredients, but 40% of it is used for cleaning. Um, if you can reduce your water consumption, because the world's running out of water, if you can reduce your water consumption and sewage costs and water treatment costs by 40% by using a byproduct, you really have something there. The other thing is, because there's electricity and moving parts in here, you've got to take it all off to wash it. You can clean things just while they're right online. And that is a big deal. Okay, automotive assembly plants. So, where they're putting together the Cadillacs and Hondas and stuff like this, there's a lot of welding and stamping and painting. Okay. Welding, you may have seen a video of, those lines of robots and their sparks flying. That's welding. And those sparks flying end up back on the weld fixture. That's a weld fixture right there. It holds two pieces of metal, robot welds it. When it gets built up with dirt and spatter, the part doesn't fit in there, and then the electronic sensor won't tell the robot to come down and weld it. That's a bigger one. So guys have to go down there with hammers and chisels and chemicals and hammer and chisel all the stuff off of this thing. This takes an obscene amount of time. And it's also very difficult on this expensive tool and the electronics. All right. Dry ice, you can do it in a matter of minutes. You might recognize that color. That's Caterpillar. Um, that is a downdraft paint booth. So the overspray gets drafted down through the grates in that floor. And then there's a stream of water that collects it and takes it to sludge it out. If you don't clean that thing, the air can't get through and it burns up the fan. So we clean a lot of these. Robots need cleaned. Um, uh, everybody says that the robot replaces people or doesn't call and say, "Well, robots need cleaned," And if you don't clean them, they get hot, they don't move well, they start to lose their performance. Um, and people coming through your plant want to see a clean plant. Oh, they don't want to buy anything from it. Like this, that's all weld slag, and it's hard as a rock, and that all responds well to thermal shock. Printing. If you've ever seen a big commercial printing press, it might be as big as a football field from one end to the other, and it's tons of moving parts, chains, gears, electronics, and then it gets inundated with ink and glues and carton dust or paper dust that just gets built up. And when it comes time to clean it, there's a team of people that run that press. Well, they got to go get the scrub brushes and the scrapers and some super harsh chemicals and rags, and they start cleaning it. And again, it gets clean enough so it's passable. And all those rags and things end up in the drum and they end up in the landfill. Now, inks respond well to thermal shock. Okay. And what you're watching right here, that is some super thick ink. And that's a good example of the impact and gas explosion because there's a lifting effect. And sometimes the thicker the contaminant, in this case, the ink, the faster it comes off. See what I mean? But again, to the guy that's got to clean this thing, this is the best job in the plant. Contracting cleaning. Okay, there are groups of guys that, they'll come in your plant and clean stuff or maintenance stuff or do whatever you don't really want your own plant people to do. That right there, that was our plant when we remodeled this one. That is a 5-axis CNC machine. That's me again. You'd think they'd have some other footage. In this case, these guys decided to go and clean all their CNC equipment because it's very old and very dirty. And they found that when they did good housekeeping and cleaned their equipment, the morale in the plant got better. Attendance got better. Heaven forbid a guy has to come and run this machine all day and it be a filthy mess. Also, everybody gets one of these man fans, especially in a plant that's hot, and they get dirty. And when they get dirty, they get off kilter and they're out of balance and they're hard to clean. You can clean them while they're right online. This is fire soot. They had a fire in this building. Okay, if you don't clean it, the whole building stinks like fire for the rest of your life. So oftentimes they have to rebuild, but you can cold jet all that fire soot right off. This guy is cleaning his Ferrari. Um, for the detail shop that's going to do this, this is awesome because again, cleaning a Ferrari by hand or any car is like flossing a cat. It's a long day of arduous work. If you can make short work out of it, the detailer can do so many more of them in a day's time than he could normally do. And again, the applications go on and on. The contract cleaner. Okay, I'm going to come back to this. Okay, so metaphorically, after seeing what we're doing, we have big applications and we have little applications. These machines do the big applications, and the tabletop things do the smaller applications. That Ultra machine will do both. You can hook up the big air cleaning, and you can put attachments on it to do small air cleaning. Jokingly, we call it the weed whacker and the mower. But also, if you've done any research, and I'm sure you have, you'll see that we are not the only ones that build these. We are the only ones that have been building them for 40 years. We're the only ones that have an R&D budget. We're the only people that make a profit at it. Okay. And we're not the low cost version of this thing. You can go right on Amazon and buy something for $3,000 that looks just like this. But what makes these expensive is that dry ice pellets don't flow very well. If they flowed well, you could put it into a sand pot. All right. It has to have a sophisticated feed mechanism. You have to have feeder parts that respond, don't over respond to going from room temperature to 109 below zero. Then you have to have hoses and applicators that remain limber at 110 below. There's a lot more to it than you think. The people that are selling $10,000 machines and $15,000 machines have been doing this for about a year or two. Um, they probably won't last in this environment because they're building basically something that we designed 30 years ago. Um, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Just be careful. You wouldn't start a tree trimming business with a 12-inch electric chainsaw, nor would you buy on your behalf of your company a piece of machinery that's going to fail, needs parts, has problems, you can't get parts. You're just going to end up with a $10 or $15,000 black eye. Okay, what have we learned? Dry ice has hundreds of applications in 52 industries. Dry ice is safe and easy to use. Dry ice saves time and money. Time and money makes money. Okay, and that's where the rubber meets the road. Dry ice is easy to get. You can get it just about anywhere. Learning how to use the machine takes about 10 minutes. And if you forget or get a new employee, we've put a QR code on the machine, and you can take a picture with your phone and watch an entire training video, as well as read the manual from cover to cover. Dry ice is environmentally friendly because it's a recycled byproduct. And PPE is standard and easy to use. Before we wrap up, I'm going to take some questions. I'm going to go over here. Just bear with me a sec. Okay. Someone asks, how much dry ice do I need for a project? Well, an operator, even though he's running 3 pounds a minute or 100 pounds an hour, because he's got setup, shutdown, breaks, and lunch, you're going to use about 500 pounds in an 8-hour scheduled work shift. Ironically, they come in 500-pound totes. So if you're going to clean on Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, you buy 3 totes on Monday, and you open them as you need them. And next week, they bring you new totes and pick up the empties. What type of air pressure compressor do I need for dry ice blasting? Well, we kind of covered that, but plan air, 130 CFM, 80 psi, and you may dial that back depending on what you're doing. Someone asks thermal shock and brittleness when blasting at 50 to 70 C mold. What metal temperature drop rate? Okay, he's asking me, is there micro cracking in the tool? No. We are only changing the surface temperature by about 20 degrees, okay, because we're just making a pass over it. The contaminant becomes cold and pops off, but the surface really doesn't change temperature that much. How do you store dry ice and how long does it last? It comes in its own storage container. It's provided to you by the dry ice supplier, and it keeps for a week. Okay. Heat soaks are the tool is 90 degrees for high temperature. Resin is safe for the yes. Okay, he's asking me if you're cleaning a hot tool, is it safe to clean with dry ice? It is. Because we're not changing the surface temperature. We're cleaning all kinds of hot stuff. Those tire molds are 300 degrees. We're cleaning foundry molds, permanent molds that are 500 degrees. Never once have had a instance damage. Does frequent dry ice cleaning accelerate edge wear on vent lands? Well, we don't wear any metals. No, we're not rounding any corners or changing the metal in any shape or form. What commercial grades of dry ice or liquid CO2 are typically accepted for blasting? And do you recommend dual sourcing to hedge against regional shortage? I'm located in Arizona. Well, you got to be smart about what you buy. There's usually more than one source. My personal suggestion is that you don't enter into a contract with anybody. That way, you're in charge of it. But shortages do happen. Okay. Thank you for this amazing presentation. You're welcome. He's asking about removing asbestos coatings. Well, asbestos is tricky because you're using compressed air, so now you've got asbestos. Now the people I know that do asbestos, they scrape off the asbestos, but they use this to remove the glue or mastic, they call it, that's behind it, because we do great work on glue. But yes, you would remove the asbestos traditionally to eliminate the compressed air, but the mastic can. Can my customer use compressed air bottles? Well, there's a machine out there that um, compressed air gas bottles to accelerate the thing. Well, you need a lot of it. Now, I've seen people use dewars of nitrogen, but that can be very expensive. Um, it's best to use a 20 horse, 25 horse rotary screw compressor. My diesel compressor has the aftercooler built in, but the aftercooler heats up in the air again. Is this okay? Well, here's the thing. Yes, if you have an aftercooler built in, you got to keep the radiator clean, because if it's outside, it's going to get dirty. But the other problem is you go air compressor, aftercooler. Now you're going to run a stretch of hose maybe across a blacktop parking lot to the cold jet, and that hose is going to get hot. All right. So it's best to have a separate aftercooler that is right next to the machine. Okay. Do you have any pictures of where debris goes that is coming off what you are cleaning? Well, pictures, no, I don't know, maybe, but basically it's going to fall in about a 5-foot radius. Um, just sweep it up or collect it on a drum. Are there measurements of degradation rate of mold using when cleaning versus conventional cleaning? We have universities that have done the testing and have comparisons. So if you would like to see that report, call me, email me at mhenderson@coldjack.com, and I'd be happy to show it to you. When working inside, is there some precaution when using ColdJet to ensure oxygen levels in the room don't go too low? Okay. The way the dry ice works is when you force its sublimation, dry ice is heavy. So the CO2 gas is heavy. So it goes down to the floor, out to the wall, your nose. All right. So if you're in a big plant environment, you're never going to fill up that room. It's going to find its way out of. Now, if you're in a a smaller room, yes, of course, you have to pay attention to that. You have to move the air or wear fresh air, and it would be smart to have a CO2 monitor. And there are calculations, and we have guidelines to go by if you like to look at if you have a confined space. I use primarily a Cat 350 steel. I want to know if I can use dry ice to blast an SP10, even if mixed with blast media. Well, yes. This is dry ice cleaning 101, so we're getting past what we really intended to do. Yes, you can mix in media and create a profile. And the cool thing about that is when you mix the two, you use dramatically less media, because the two work together and you get a lot more done with a lot less hard media. But you also save a step. If you were to use media alone, you would have to go back and clean out the profile, and then rust inhibit and stuff like that. When you use dry ice and media, you clean out the profile as you go, so you can paint right behind it. What is the consumption rate of dry ice per hour, compressed gas per hour? How to convert the cost? Okay. Now, this varies depending on what you're doing and stuff, but in most cases, for general housekeeping and stuff like that, the machine runs right around 3 pounds a minute. Now, an average operator isn't on the gun an entire hour. He's on the gun, uh, on, off, periodically. So, an average operator will use 100 pounds an hour. Okay. And like I said before, 100 pounds an hour equates into about 500 pounds per 8 hour shift. What about contamination? Would a mask or breather be necessary PPE while this product? Well, that all depends on what you're doing. If you're cleaning something that is harmful, then absolutely. Um, that's kind of a personal policy or plant policy. If you think it's important, but the CO2 is not going to. It's if you have something that's respirable that you're concerned about, then by all means wear a mask. Is there a version of cold that could be used for cleaning the internals of computers? Um, well, dry ice cleaning is line of sight. So if you can clean it, you can clean it. Now, we are cleaning conformal coatings off printed circuit boards and stuff like that, but they are taken apart. I don't know of anything where you stick it in the computer and it does an internal clean. But we don't mind trying stuff. So if you have something you want to try and you want to send it in here, I'm happen to be the guy that does the in-house testing too. So call me. Um, should we assume that air pressure determines paint surface cleaning versus removal? Does the paint shape also factor into the level of removal? Here's the deal on paint. There are a million kinds of paint engineered to do a million different things, applied to a million different substrates, and applied by somebody who may or may not know how to paint. Okay. So, although we don't really say we're a paint removal method, um, failing paint will come off. So, hypothetically, if you got a contract and you want to paint this ceiling, um, it doesn't may necessarily have to all come off, um, because it's not a Rolls Royce. All right. So if you could just only need to remove the grease, oil, dirt, and failing paint so that you can get new paint, then this is absolutely worth it. If you have to get a profile to it because you're going to put a coating on there that their warranty requires you profile it, this may not be your thing. It's all a case by case situation. How long of a hose can be used between the machine and the thing you're cleaning? That's a great question. The machine comes with a 20-foot hose. Now you can add 20-foot sections onto it. You can go 100 feet straight up, but you have to have the air volume behind you. So if you're going to go straight up here 20 feet, you don't have to worry about it too much. But if you're going into the plant 200 yards and then going 100 feet straight up, you've got to go from a 185 diesel compressor to maybe a 325 just to get the air volume behind it. But yeah, you can go straight up 100 feet. Quoted price for high density pellets picked up on the plant was quoted at $1.10 a pen. Where do I get 30 cents a pound? Well, remember I said the prices vary depending on how far away you are from the source and because it's the transportation costs. I don't know where you are, but if you call me, we might know somebody closer to you. Pardon me. But we can help you work through that. Call your local sales rep. What's the standard way to bill a customer? I think you're asking me, how does a contractor bill a customer? Well, there's three ways. There's time and materials. Time and materials is when you have a good relationship with your customer and he just trusts you that you're going to bill him for time and the next step is square footage. You've got to figure out the square footage. You're going to charge him XYZ per square foot. But if you're going to do that, you have to understand your removal rate per square foot and cost per square foot. Okay. So you're going to have to do a little test. Um, The last one is flat rate. I'm going to clean this XYZ for $50,000, and got to make sure you don't leave any money on the table. It's all case by case. It's hard to say in 1 minute exactly how to do. Those are the three ways to do it. You just have to work through the math. Can you clean data centers with dry ice? Data center, sure. You can clean almost anything. I'm not sure what data center means. Sorry. Which machine were you using to clean the electronic panels? In this case, uh, keep in mind, almost any one of these will do what you want it to do. You just have to set it up a little differently. So one machine doesn't equal this application. Your field salespeople can then help you identify what's best for you. It really gets down to how often you're going to use it, who's using it, how much. There's a lot of factors to consider, but that's a longer question. Can control EHT force of the blast, or how do you control the force? Well, there's a regulator in the machine. You just turn the air pressure down. How well will it clean asphalt on things like paving equipment and dump trucks? Very well. Asphalts, tars, stickiness, and the asphalt plants all have these to clean their tanks, but tack trucks, pavers, all that stuff works very well. And we have video of it here and case studies. If you call in, I can share it with you. Does dry ice work on floor mastics? Yeah, it does. Not only that, if you've got those old vinyl or asbestos tiles, it's cool because if remember we talked about the lifting effect, the dry ice will get up underneath it and the whole tile comes up. They just come popping up. And they come up rather fast. And then you go back and do the mastic. And you could probably, last time I did floor mastic, I was doing about 4 square feet a minute. Okay. Use cases for plastic extrusion die cleaning. We currently bake the die and hand scrub it. Do you know use cases, how much time it saved? Everything's different, but we do clean extrusion dies, and we have video of it, and there are some case studies that we can share with you. I would be hard for me to go over it all this time. What is the after effect, for example, stripping varnish off cedar wood? I wouldn't do it. Here's why. To make the thermal shock work, the contaminant, in your case varnish, has to be cold faster than the substrate. If the wood substrate isn't going to absorb any temperature. So typically what happens, you end up digging a hole in the varnish. That digs a hole in the wood. It just tears the wood. Unless it's some crazy super hard wood or extreme circumstance. I've never seen that work very. Sorry. Can I visit your Ohio location? Bring something to see it in action. You absolutely can. And guess who gives the tours? Me. Call me. I'd love to have you. We love to have people bring stuff in. I'll give you a plant tour. I'll go through all the machines with you, show you how they differ. And we have a test facility here, and we'll test your whatever it is you want. But call me first so we know what it is, and I can prepare. We have stainless steel roll 500 pounds. We want to remove tarnish reel to reel. We would like to clean twice a year. Okay. I have to understand what tarnish means. If you've got the cold rolled steel and it has a little surface rust on it, if that's what you mean by tarnish, this is not unusual. So the steel, or sometimes it's pipe from a pipe mill, sits out in the yard, and it gets some flash rust on it. And they don't want it to ship to the customer that way. Yes, you can do that. Now, if it's pitted, that means you have to abrade it. Okay. If you're removing muck from a painted surface like a car, how do you protect from not removing the paint? Well, car paint is good paint. I mean, I clean the bugs off my truck. It doesn't even affect it. Won't even scratch the paint. So if the paint is well adhered, factory paint, it's not going to affect it. We can also turn it off. I mean, we clean the M off an M&M. We can certainly take dirt and stuff off the car with that. Earlier, you mentioned removing lead paint. Would you still need to have a special lead removal permit to clean up the residue? Uh, That is region to region, and I'm not an expert on permitting and stuff like that. If the job requires you have a lead permit, then yeah, I would assume so. You probably also need a permit to approach the landfill with it. There's a lot of red tape in there that we talked about. And please remember, we're a manufacturer of these things, but we probably have some stuff that you can look at that will help you understand that a little. For the mobile setup, does Coaljet sell the aftercooler? Yes, we have aftercoolers. Our aftercooler is a 400 CFM aftercooler, which means you can run 2 machines off it. So big air compressor, aftercooler, 1 or 2 machines. Uh, do you have any videos of small parts deburring from CNC machining? Yes, yeah, we sure do. Oftentimes, especially with medical devices, we're very popular when you mold a peak part and then it goes to the machine. It gets lots of hairs and burrs and flags. We can deburr that like that, and we have video of it, and we have case studies. So please call me, and I'll be happy to share it with you. I'm in the restoration business. I clean mold residue from facades, etc. What size machine is recommended? Well, once again, any one of those will clean mold. I caution people to buy an entry level machine to make a living with. You want something that's going to last for a long time. That's really something you should work out with your regional sales manager. But any one of them will do mold. How long can the hose run from the unit? 100 feet. What is the loss of stored per ice per day? You're going to lose about 4% a day to natural sublimation. Okay, but in a week's time, you're still going to have this. Do you have a single unit that takes liquid CO2 and turns it into usable dry ice in one go? No, and I'll tell you why. Hold on a minute. If you do the math to calculate the cylinder and the cost of the ice when you buy it in that low of volume, you end up running dry ice at $5-6 a pound, and then the tank runs out in 10 minutes. Every 10 minutes, you're gonna get, and it's in the most extreme way to clean something. Now it looks very novel and handy, but it's after you do it for about a week, you'll go, oh God, that was terrible. What phase voltage does the machine use? Well, you just plug it into a 110 outlet and it draws about 5 amp. Okay. Do you have any aerospace applications? Is there any military other specifications available for purpose of cleaning with dry ice? Yes. There's lots of things in aerospace. GE aircraft is right 3 exits down from here. They use it all the time. This is used by NASA. This is used by SpaceX. This is used by Rolls-Royce, Pratt Whitney, everybody. And lots of applications. You call us, we can fill you in. Which machine would you recommend for a small rubber molding company that has need to clean 12 by 12 or smaller mold plates? Well, I mean, you would find one of these tabletop machines to work best. You can't see it, but that's the most convenient and the easiest and the most ergonomic and less noise. If you have a budget constraint, well, you can use one of the entry level models. They clean molds just as well as this. You're just going to use more air and a little more ice, and it's a little louder. Do you have a list of different pressure settings need to detail the different materials on the chassis of a collector car when detailing? Or is that a trial and error process? Okay, again, I'm a car guy. No. They're all different. But you can learn as you go. I mean, you can learn to use this thing in 10 minutes. If you're overdoing it, you just simply turn the machine down. If you're updoing it, if you need a little more, you turn it up. Um, um, Nobody really has diagrammed all that yet. And as a manufacturer, this doing the auto detailing is about 5% of what we do. So now the field sales rep knows a lot about it and will give you all the training you want. Does food grade certification for the liquid CO2 carry over to dry ice? All the dry ice that the world sells to you is food grade. It comes in a cleaned box that has a food grade liner. Can it ever be used to remove paint from wood or metal surfaces? Dry ice alone, I mentioned this before, is not designed for paint removal. Now, failing paint or flaky paint that's already coming off, sure. Um, Removing paint from wood, well, you're gonna tear the wood up. So if you don't care about the wood, so for example, that mold on that frame of that house, well, nobody's ever going to see that. It doesn't affect the structural integrity. But if you want the wood to be beautiful, probably not. What size machine do you use in the university setting with various in a university setting with various switchgear sizes? Um, I'm not sure what that means. In the universities that I've dealt with are using it to clean statues, stadiums, parking garages after football games, chewing gum, um, stuff like that. If you have switchgear, any one of them will clean switchgear. So you just reset the parameters on it. Okay. Are there any materials that are harmed by dry ice? Certain rubbers, plastics, maybe. Not really. No. Dry ice is very benign. What level machine would you recommend for a company doing mold in attics and crawl spaces? Again, any one of these will do that kind of work. Any machine we have. As you spend more money, you get a machine that has a more stout construction, a better, more features, better attachments and stuff just like anything. What are the dangers of using it on painted surfaces such as car exteriors and black painted engine compartments and parts? What about the removal of surface rust? There are no dangers to it's not going to hurt your paint if it's a good factory paint. And if the paint is well adhered, it's not going to bother that at all. I clean my engine bay on my car in about 10 minutes. The one thing you have to look out for the foam strips and stuff like that, but you can learn that in a matter of minutes. Can I talk about the blaster that adds sand for paint removal? Yes. It is an attachment. It goes between the blast machine. Okay, so you set up air compressor, blast machine, then the attachment, and then to the thing. It simply mixes in the media into the dry ice stream. The benefits are that you're going to use less dry ice. I'm sorry, less media, so there's less landfill and cleanup, and that you save a step where you clean out the profile. Okay, so you can paint right behind. Is there a nozzle that will fit through a 3/8 access port? Probably. Probably. But if it's going to snake around and go somewhere, probably not, because we're line of sight. We'd have to understand the question better. Do you need to place a tarp plastic underneath or capture any waste? Well, I mean, you can if you want. If what you're cleaning is nasty, but most things don't re-adhere, so you just sweep it up. In the video, sometimes paint comes off, but sometimes it stays behind. What's the difference in those procedures? Well, in that case, the paint it was poorly adhered in some places. So the guy that painted that didn't prepare it well. Okay. We call that POD, paint on dirt. So you got to clean and prepare a paint surface. So if you've got a surface and the guy's painting and it was oily here and oily here, that paint's not going to stick. So as you come by with a cold jet, it's going to come off where it was poorly adhered. Okay. How long to clean an engine? Well, that depends on how dirty the engine is. But um, uh, I, when before I take my car to the show, I'll bring it over here to the engine bay, the wheels, the wheel wells, the dashboard, seats, pedals. Takes about 45 minutes. Now, it's not very dirty. An extremely dirty car would take twice as long. Okay, but it all depends. Where in Canada can I look for a cold jet machine? We happen to have an office in Cambridge, Ontario. If you call in here to the factory, we will transfer you to talk to them. Second question is about cleaning injection mold with as high mirror polish for lenses. Even small dirt or dust particle that gets blown on the surface will create a scratch or pit. Is there a solution to this? The answer is it either will or will not work. I don't know. We would have to do some testing. And if you want to bring your part in, maybe if you have one that's sacrificial, you could bring it in or send it in and we will clean it and see. I mean, we haven't tried every single thing, but we do like to look under stones. Can this remove epoxy adhesive from a steel mold? We clean most adhesives. If it's some kind of two-part epoxy that's some crazy epoxy, maybe not. But we'd like to try. I question why the mold or you I would like to. I need to understand it better. Is it a delicate process? Can you use smaller airlines and CFM? You can on the micro version side. Yes, you can use a 3/8 line, but you're going to get a blast swath about that big. If that's okay with you, then yeah, absolutely. Is dry ice considered food contact safe? Yes, it is. It's approved by the FDA, USDA, and EPA. How durable is the system as far as transportation down a pothole-filled roads? Good question. I um, literally was in a hurry and threw one in the back of my pickup truck and didn't put the tailgate up because I had to scurry out of where I was. And when I got on the freeway, it fell off the back. And when I hit the brakes, it tumbled past me. And I put it back on the truck and I went to my next demo and used it, and it works. The appropriate machine is very, very durable. Do you offer rental units or field services? Can you supply a contact for this? We don't have a contract cleaning company. Yes, we can supply you with people that do. Do we have a rental business? We don't have a daily, weekly, monthly rental program. We do have trial programs for those who think they want to buy one, but they need to understand it better and gather some ROI data in the meantime. We do that. But you can go to a rental agency like United Rentals, Sunbelt, one of these guys, a lot of cool rentals have them. A lot of the welder supply people have them for rent. Trying to set up a mobile automotive based business using large diesel compressor prohibitive. Suggestions for smaller gas powered setup, utilizing additional air tanks. Thanks for the presentation. Thank you. Because of the air consumption, using tanks and stuff are hard to do because you're going to drain that tank in minutes. All right. You really, that's a big question. She should get with the local sales rep and they can go through it and give you examples. It'd be hard for me to go through it all with you in a short answer. Any metal that you shouldn't use dry ice on? I haven't found one yet. Okay. I haven't found one. And I've done a lot of them. Can you clean electric motors while they're energized? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we did some testing because the motor was super dirty. The guy put an amp gauge on the cable, and while we cleaned it, watch the amp drop. But yeah, that's the great thing about you. You can clean them while they're running. Um, that's why nobody cleans them. They don't want to get them wet. Will this presentation be available to share with my team? I believe you will get a recorded copy. Right, guys? Yeah. You will receive a recorded copy of this. When dry ice blasting for 8-hour workday, the OSHA required PPE air is mandatory air must correct. Right. From what I understand, the 8-hour OSHA work reg is plugs and muffs. How thick of resin can you clean off when running a coating line with polyurethane resins and abrasive grit? I don't know. That's a pretty big question. Polyurethane resins? It's hard to say. Eh, I don't know. I'm sorry. We'd have to do some testing. How important is the aftercooler? The aftercooler is very important. If you're running questionable wet hot air, dry ice doesn't like hot or wet. If you don't use the aftercooler, you're just creating a problem down the road. The machine will start to freeze up and clog up, and then now you're shooting water out at the target, which is what we're trying to eliminate anyway. When blasting cleaning material from a surface, does this full jet approach just sorry. When blasting cleaning material from a surface, does this cold jet approach just disperse the dirt throughout the room? Is there a way to collect the removed dirt contamination? Well, you can set up containment by hanging VisiQueen or curtains. Sure, yeah, containment is good. And then you just vacuum it up. Can you clean food plant conveyors? Absolutely. We do it all over the place. Metal, mesh, plastic. Absolutely. Will dry ice blasting remove powder coat overspray on production line equipment? If it's just overspray and it's not cured up, then probably yes. Now there's all kinds of different powder coats out there, but cured up powder coat, absolutely not. That is too good of stuff. Are there connections to control the system with a robot? Sure. That's pretty easy to do. So there's a trigger. It's hooked that activates the machine, and that goes from the gun. So you go machine, hose, gun, and trigger. You simply remove this, hook the nozzle to the hose, clamp that to the robot. Then the control goes right to the robot. We just give you the wire diagram, and the robot tells the machine to turn on. And we can do all kinds of stuff like removal of lead-based paint. Did a job and paint was hard to remove. Any advice for next time? Sorry. Once again, million kinds of paint, stuck on a million different things. It's not really designed to be a paint removal method, but I mean, usually lead paint's pretty old. There are a lot of organic paint softeners out there that work. I'm like a product called Soy, SOY, like soybean hyphen it, Soy it. You can paint that on, let it sit a little bit, and that will soften up the paint. And I've seen that do miraculous things. But it's not a guarantee either. It depends on the paint. Lots of paint out there. Have you seen anyone use this to clean photo eyes on agricultural spray equipment? I have not. However, from what I know about photo eyes, oftentimes it's under a vacuum, and and they're not all the same. And this was a long time ago. Maybe they've changed. Photo eyes under a vacuum sometimes respond to the thermal shock and implode. Um, I don't have an answer for you. Sorry. What unit can remove paint from wood, trim, and doors? We don't recommend removing paint. We don't remove paint very well, especially off of wood and trim. That's just a bad application. Does the combi system have an aftercooler in it? No, it's not. We would simply sell you an aftercooler. The the cooling needs to happen, at a different spot. For a small shop doing cars and small items, do you recommend purchasing dry ice as needed or producing it on your own? It's a big question. Most people, it seems so convenient to produce your own dry ice, but and we'd love for you to buy one. But it doesn't really make financial sense for you to make your own dry ice unless you're making 3 or 4 thousand pounds of dry ice a week. All right. Yeah, just you won't have the buying power on the liquid, and the conversion from liquid to solid is expensive. Um, so there's an ROI that says 3 4 thousand pounds a week. You have the math to justify it. Like I said, we'd like for you to buy one, but once you do the math, you'll figure out it's easier just to have it delivered. Also, what length of the hose are there? I usually clean 3 to 4 story buildings. You can go 100 feet straight up. I've seen people go 200 feet straight up, but you have to have a massive air compressor to get that to work. And it also depends on what you're cleaning. If you're just doing greasehold dirt and stuff like that, it doesn't matter. If you're trying to do something hard, you're gonna have to try to do something different or get the machine up higher. How does dry ice work to remove corrosion from bronze sculptures and and the unit's portable? Yes, everything is portable. We did some sculptures. A few years ago, we did down in Miami. We did the Ponce de Leon statue at Bayfront Park, and the other four that were there. Now, the conservator really just wanted to get the previous layers of wax and bird droppings and environmental dirt off so that they could repatinate it. Um, Corrosion, well, corrosion refers to, is it in the metal or on the metal? We don't take stuff out of metal, that's abrasion. We take stuff off of metal. So you have to identify the corrosion. Can dry ice blasting be used to clean automobile frames and engines? Yes, it will clean a frame, but it's not going to abrade it. Remember, okay? But clean it, sure. Yeah. I had a guy had a matching numbers GTO judge, and somebody Z-barred it back in the 70s. And they wanted the Z-bar off. The car as it was an $85,000 car. With the Z-bar off was $130,000. Now, to take all that Z-bar off by hand was going to take months. I had it all off in a couple of hours. And so yes, it can be clean. How well does this work on rusty metal? If it's surface rust, it will come right off. If it's pitted rust, that's abrasion. You're going to have to grind that out. Could you speak to the use of dry ice for using during storm events and for transformer cooling? I'm not sure what you mean. During a storm or post-storm? People use this to clean post-storm if you have flooding, sludge, mold, stuff like that. Transformer cooling, I don't know. I'm not sure what you mean. I'd have to understand it. Sorry. Do you train people on site in Southern California? Absolutely. We have a location in Rancho Cucamonga. If you know where that is, it's right near Ontario or east of LA. Have you ever heard of using dry ice on direct contact with food or rapid cooling? Yes. Sure. We clean all kinds of ovens and conveyors and extrusion lines and stuff like that. But the rapid cooling is a big deal. But that's a whole other thing. Again, that's not dry ice 101, but we'd be happy to show you how to do rapid cooling with dry ice. It's far better than CO2 snow horns and stuff like that. Yes, please call us. Can we clean surfaces which have food such as chocolate baked on it in chains? Yeah. Chocolate responds well. Um, I think Hershey up there in Pennsylvania must have 32 of these things. But Ghirardelli, M&M Mars, all of these guys use this because you can clean a chocolate enrober and stuff like that without contaminating it. Shoot, the chocolate falls down, you can still use it. I have an Aero 40F HP with different nozzles. Is there a pressure that is too high for any nozzle? For example, MERN nozzles. We currently run 13 bar, 189 psi at the machine. Well, that machine is going to have a pop off at about 240. Okay. No, that is the nozzle you should use. That nozzle is designed for high pressures, high volumes. You're using just the exact. We also have a fragment MERN nozzle that, but have troubles with with damaged wood as well. I'm sorry, damaged wood also at 3 or 4 bar. Is there another way to cut down the ice pellets with my machine? All right. If you're trying to make the wood look pretty, yes, you've got to fragment on the highest setting and turn the air pressure down. Now I'm not going to guarantee you're not going to ding that wood up a little bit. You probably are. The only way to get past that, because probably what's happening is you're removing the pith and leaving the grain high. Hard to get around that. Turn the air pressure down, fragment better. That's the best advice I can give. Would this make sense for cleaning residential applications, driveway windows? No. Um, because it's expensive to operate. Um, why wouldn't you just use a garden hose? It's much cheaper. I mean, I don't know about being a smart aleck. You know, when I had one myself, once I went to do the gutters with it, and the police came in about 8 minutes because it's 118 dB at the operator's ear. Our neighbors are not going to like. You're not going to want to use it. Now, guys going up in the attic to do the mold, that's a different thing. Do you have large nozzles? Yes, we have hundreds of nozzles. They go from very small up to 4 inch. We have field guys that have all the nozzles on them. So if you want to do some nozzle testing, call us. We'll arrange for a guy to come out and do some nozzle testing with you. What is the useful life of this machine if used 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? Well, that's hard to answer. It depends on the environment in which you use it and who's using it, and if they're following the do's and don'ts on the training. But we've got machines that have been out there running for 15, 20, 30 years. Um, Literally, if you leave the lid shut and do what we tell you, they last un, unmeasurable years. How wide of wand do you use for adhesive? Well, um, okay. If you spread out the width on on the nozzle, you start to lose energy in the pellet. Okay, so you have to dial in the right nozzle, and different adhesives require different aggressions. But mostly, you should use the 1 inch nozzle that's long 1 inch nozzle. That does adhesive the best. What happens to the mold residue? Well, okay, are you asking me what happens to residue from a molded product or the mold from a moldy house? I'm going to answer them both. The spores that you clean off of a mold that's in a structure get HEPA filtered and HEPA vaxed and HEPA filtered out of the structure. If you're talking about the off gassing that's in the mold in a molded dashboard, it just falls onto the ground and it gets swept up in your mop water. Does Cold Jet provide maintenance schedule documents for their machine? Can I buy replacement parts from you? Yes. Um, Different machines have different um, maintenance schedules. We can provide you with that information, and yes, you can buy parts from us. Now, if the machine is obsolete, because we don't really make parts for the machines we built 40 years ago anymore. because they're just not out there. But so we'd have to understand better. Does Cold Jet sell used equipment? We do when we have it. When they get in here, they go fast. So you just have to call in and check. Call your sales rep. Can you use it to removal of stickers on paint or paint on glass? It does a great job on stickers. There's a food plant that has about 30 of these cleaning misstuck labels that get onto conveyors and things. Can we remove paint on glass? Yeah, but you have to get real delicate because you don't want to break the glass. It depends on the thickness of the glass and stuff. Does this work for graffiti removal? It's hit or miss. I'm not going to lie to you. It depends on it depends on how long it's been stuck on there and baking in the sun and what it's stuck to. And sometimes those graffiti guys, they know exactly what kind of paint to buy. I've seen graffiti that comes right off, and I've seen graffiti that wouldn't budge. It's hit or miss, like I said. Like, remember, we're not really ever paint removal. Can we clean leather with dry ice? That is a new one on me. I'm guessing you're gonna mark it up. I don't know. I cleaned my suede shoes the other day with it. I dropped some stuff on it, but then we did a guy's tennis shoes and we took the dye out of the fabric. But I don't know. If you want to send me a piece, I'll clean it for you and we'll see what we get. What concerns about grounding a machine to what to blasting? Great question. Okay. When you are sending pellets through a hose at the speeds that we are, you are stripping electrons. So you are creating static. Okay. And now we're plugged into the earth, and there's a control cable that goes from the nozzle back to the earth. So you're grounded to the earth. Now, if what you're cleaning is not ground, there's a ground strap on the machine. You simply ground it to the target, and that will create a bonding circuit. Okay. If what you're cleaning is not grounded and you don't hook it up, it will gather static and it will find you as the ground and it'll catch you right in the belt buckle. Trust me, I've done it a few. It's not pleasant. So yes, you do have to understand grounding. Am I able to lease a machine for demonstration purposes? Sure. Can make one available for you. Does a cooler normally suffice for compressed air treatment, or would a dryer be a helpful addition? The aftercooler is enough. Dryer is even better. If your cleaning application requires super duper dry air, then absolutely buy a dryer. They're a lot more expensive than an aftercooler. My 40 HP has a rotor with round holes. I have seen that there are some with square holes in the rotor. Can I upgrade it, and will it have some benefits? Well, maybe. Some say that the rectangular holes give a nicer flow. Can absolutely upgrade it. We have a field sales rep that will come out and walk you through it. Yeah, and it's easy to change. You do it yourself. Can you shoot dry ice at a 90 degrees through slots on a nozzle that is capped off at the end? Well, you can. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Blind cavities are a problem because there's nowhere for the pellet to go. So you're probably not going to have a great result. Everybody, thank you for joining us today. This was a big thrill for me. I enjoyed this very much. I also want to thank the two individuals that put this whole thing together. Paul Eichler, who is a genius with these kinds of electronics. Matt Caminetti, who's a marketing genius. This was great. I hope it was great for you. I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody. And honest to God, if you call in here, I'm probably going to answer the phone. Please call us. We'd like to talk about whatever applications you have in mind. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.